joining us live now with his weekly take on political news from all levels of government is CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid. Scott, good to see you, even though it's virtual this morning.
It is virtual. You have to stay virtual when it's this humid, you know.
Yeah.
I'm in a cool, refrigerated place.
I'm sure your basement is nice and cool. You look very comfortable, Scott. I'm not sure how comfortable Mark Carney is feeling, though, right about now. You know, this trade talk deadline between Canada and the U.S., it's been sort of set by Trump for August the 1st. But anybody watching seems to me we kind of realize now this isn't happening by August 1st. And does that create any more concerns, or is this just the way these negotiations are going?
It creates a lot of concern because business, employers, unions, workers, the rest of us who ever purchase anything that touches the world of trade, which is everything, are wondering what will happen. And we're now, 24 hours removed from the big deal with the European Union. And I think it's instructive to look at that as we think about the deadline that's 3 days hence for Canada and the United States, because the EU deal is being roundly condemned as a complete capitulation, a total surrender on the part of the EU to Trump, where basically he said to them, here's the deal, you can take it. If you don't, I will punish you. I will assault your economies even harder. So it's getting a lot of criticism. And I would say, Nick, in that context, if the only deal available to Canada by August 1st is a terrible deal, one with the cross-the-board tariffs, one that will punish industries that aren't even tariff currently, well, then you have to wonder if the trick for the Carney government this week isn't to get a deal, but how to get away with not getting a deal, but not to be punished for it. Because, of course, then you have to worry if Trump says, well, I'm insulted that you wouldn't take my glorious offer. And so now I'm going to hit you with yet more tariffs.
Yeah, this is kind of looking like, the Cup W Canada post-negotiations. Scott, very interesting. You said that there's a kind of anonymous EU negotiator that talked about weakness versus strength. And Premier Doug Ford has been quite outspoken saying, hey, Trump is a guy that appreciates strength. We cannot be weak. We can't roll over. We got to fight for the best deal possible. And, he's saying we got to fight tariff for tariff. But what do you make of this? And is Carney going to kind of take heed to this advice and negotiate from a position of strength versus weakness?
I think this is all super interesting. First of all, you hear this anonymous voice from Europe, someone in the foxhole who, helped negotiate this last deal and recognizes how bad it is, saying to Canada, well, Trump only respects strength. He does not respect weakness. Well, I don't know if he respects anything, but I'm positive he preys on weakness. So we can't appear weak. And I think in that respect, you heard yesterday Doug Ford come out so forcefully saying, you know what, we got to be ready to slap new tariffs and retaliation against the Americans. We can't take this laying down. We can't get a good deal. Let's make Trump feel pain. And a lot of people interpreted that as, well, Ford's really putting a lot of pressure on Carney. In some ways, actually, in these last few days, I wonder if this is a coordinated move. I wonder, Ford and Carney have been so in step. Obviously last week they were at his cottage, brewing up s'mores, the late night campfire. I don't think this is a breach of the two. I think in some ways the Americans, are sitting there looking at us going, you know what, you guys have no cards. And so Carney says, listen, I got the largest province in my country, the premier of it, who's been an ally, breathing down my neck. You guys don't understand the political pressure domestically. We will have no choice but to come at you with both barrels. I think he wants that kind of public pressure so he can use it to create tension in the talks, try to secure some kind of deal. So what looks like a forceful outburst from Ford, I think, is actually probably all part of these August 1st deadlines and machinations. Whether it will amount to a damn, I don't know, but that's the way I read it.
Okay, that is a really interesting reading from someone who dealt with communications for the PMO for years, Scott. That is a very interesting coming from you as well. Let's talk municipal politics right now. Housing. We saw the federal minister of housing, Gregor Robertson, in town yesterday making an announcement. And also there was this issue about maybe Toronto won't get all the money that it expects from the accelerator fund because it's not going to allow sixplexes to be sort of anywhere in the city. What do you make of this back and forth? And, is Toronto going to get up to the table, as it were?
What was so interesting about yesterday's announcement, Gregor Robertson, the housing minister here, last week he says, listen, if Toronto doesn't get in step on sixplexes, they are not going to get cash from the accelerator fund. It's that straightforward. And, we heard Shelley Carroll, the budget chief, saying, oh, they should just give it to us. We're working on it. Well, we've been working on it since hell was, an infant. So I think what's interesting, not about what was said yesterday in this affordable housing announcement, what wasn't said. The issue was barely addressed. They really didn't talk about it in public. And, we're all looking to the Carney government saying, you got to show some strength, you got to show some spine, we got to get housing built. Well, I think they are going to show spine. And I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on the city as we see resistance from council, a lot of NIMBYism going on saying, well, sixplexes are great in concept, but not in my backyard, not in my ward, not in my purview. Yeah. And I think you're going to see the federal government really put the tension to Toronto.
Mm-hmm. Okay, CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid. Always appreciate your time and your thoughts. Stay cool, Scott.